Hi there! In this video, I want you and me together build this beautiful login page with a glass morphism effect on its background. Beautiful, right?
Nice.
But I don't have an account.
No account? No worries. Clicking on the Create an Account text converts the login page completely to the registration page.
Now you can create an account by filling the inputs like full name, username, email, password, and password confirmation.
As soon as you are done, you can go back to the login page the same way you came in. Above that, we have a password display feature and a custom checkbox. We also can visit other pages from the nav bar. Since we agreed that we would only talk about the login page in this video, we'll leave other pages for someone else. Moreover, our project is gonna be fully responsive. That means we can view it on smaller devices. This is a small front-end project, and to create it we're gonna use these tools. Let's get into coding. We open the VS Code, our battlefield. Here we have an images folder with only one background image. And let's create the three brothers files. Since HTML is the skeleton of every website out there, we start from this skeleton as well. We name our project just for kicks. We create relationships among the brothers. And now let's create a container that will hold all of our HTML. We start from the navbar. We create our unique and fascinating logo. You can create your own one, but be sure you won't make it better than this. We make one unsorted list that has 4 children of list items.
We name the pages like Home, About Us, Contact Us, and Login.
We set their tab index attribute to 1. This makes them focusable, and that will allow us to create this clicked or focused effect. Next is our form tag, a parent for both of our forms. Then we create a text that tells us where we are in a sign-in page or sign up. Then we create our inputs for collecting the user data. We add placeholders and change their types accordingly. If you've noticed, the inputs have icons, and to create them, we cover our inputs in divs. Below the inputs, we have a submit button. We cover its text in a span tag to be able to change it from sign in to sign up and the reverse. Then we have a section that remembers our data, which we create using checkbox definitely, and helps us when we have forgotten our passwords. The next section allows the user to log in using other accounts. In our case, using Facebook and Google accounts. Okay, finally we create this create an account text that guides us to the registration page, and this is the one we use to toggle between the pages. For now, we are done with our HTML, but we will update and edit this file. Before we proceed, I'd kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel. Your support means a lot. The future videos are gonna be much better. This is just the beginning. Let's open browser on the right and start beautifying our ugly HTML code. Now let's define some assets. First off, our main font is Poppin font, which you can find and import from Google Fonts faster than this guy. Then we have some colors and some transitions saved as variables. And the last variable, index, is very useful. We use it to force an element to change its size depending on the width and height of the viewport. In other words, we make our elements responsive at some level by avoiding the use of media queries. We get rid of some default settings. Then we make the body tag fit its content and apply Poppins font to it so that it also applies to everything inside the body. Unfortunately or fortunately, buttons do not inherit their parent's font by default, so we manually tell the buttons to inherit the body font. Let's work with a container. We make it the size of the viewport. Its background is going to be an image setting in the center and covering the viewport. It's going to have pseudo elements, so we give it a relative position. And using flex, we centralize its only child, which is our form tag. The background image is too bright. We need to decrease its brightness. The simple approach is using the filter brightness function, but as we see, this approach is also changing the brightness of the container's children, which we do not want definitely. So we take another path. We decrease the brightness using the container's pseudo element. Next is the navbar tag that aligns its children in a row with some paddings around them, and its position is fixed. Do you remember our logo? We make it bigger, bolder, hoverable, and white. Then via the unsorted list class, we align list items in a row, give a gap between them, and remove their dots. We don't need them. We proceed designing list items, this time using their own class. Give them 2 pixels padding, make them hoverable, white, and larger, and capitalize them. We also make their position relative to create this underlying effect on hover using its pseudo class, which is a white line, and by default it's moved to the left completely. However, when hovered, we move the line right under the list item, and of course we hide them when they're not under the list items. Eventually, this hovering effect we get. Let's give it a focused effect right away. When focused and clicked, we simply convert the line to a background color and make it a bit transparent. There we go, that's great. Now let's move down and start designing our form tag. Using flex, it aligns its children vertically in the center with 1 rem gap between them. We give it a relative width and height and padding calculated using the index variable we talked about. We make its border light and rounded. And using this blur function of the backdrop filter property, we create a glass morphism or glassmorphic background. Since we are working on the half screen, it looks too narrow, which is why we use this temporary media query that we will delete when we start making our project fully responsive. We make the logging text wide and bigger and move to the inputs right away. First, we give inputs parent div 70% of width and make them relative. As for the inputs, we give them typical CSS attributes, making them transparent with pretty borders. Nothing to talk about here. We can only say that when activated, we make the inputs border brighter. But we have to talk about icons, which we get from Font Awesome website. You must have an account to use this website's icons. The free version gives you 1 free kit. Copy this kit and paste it into the header of your HTML code. Now you can use its free icons. I'm gonna paste the icons I have chosen. You can use any icons you want. If we want to get another icon, we can simply search for it and copy it and paste it, or just change the second class name, which is unique for every icon. We give them a total class name, and using this class name we make them white and move them to the right side of the inputs. One important point: when we apply the password display feature, we will notice this shifting or blinking issue while the eye icon changes to the I/1. This happens because the /1 is wider. This is a size problem. So to fix it, we simply make the icon box wider than both icons and then move them to the center. What is next? Next is the button, and there is nothing special about it. We just make it look like our inputs but with a light orange background color. And as usual, we give it a hover effect. Then we have this action section. Let's give this section parent div some CSS to align its children in a row. After that, we apply some style to the remember me text, making it look nicer. Right after that, we designed the forget password button, making it look like a simple text with a hover effect. And now it's time to create the custom checkbox I promised. Since custom checkbox input is not flexible, we cannot style it as we want. That's the reason why we set its display to none and use the input label instead. The label itself will serve as a wrapper, which is inline block and has a relative position. We're gonna use the label before pseudo element to create the box and the after pseudo element to create the check mark. First, we give them their general properties. Then we create the box using before pseudo element as we said. And when the checkbox is checked, we make its background color brighter. Finally, we create the check mark, and of course we create it when the checkbox is checked. Let's test it out. We are done with our checkbox. Let's move to the next section, which is the other methods of login. Again, nothing mysterious here. Everything is straightforward. We just style the text and then the buttons. I just want to point out that we make this button size responsive. Since they are large, we want them to shrink as the screen size gets smaller. Finally, we have to design this create an account text. We transfer them in one line. Make the second text underlined, hinting to a user that this is a link. And give it a hovering effect, of course. I think it's better to capitalize action section texts. We've reached the most interesting part, adding more features and functionalities. We start with the easiest one. Clicking on the sign in button refreshes the page, which is the default behavior of the form tag. In JS, we get this tag from the document by its ID, and we save it not to lose it. On its submission though, we prevent this default behavior. Done. Next, let's revive our navbar. We're gonna add routing to our pages, and to do that, we give the other pages class name to the list items besides the login page. To this one, we give an ID go to login. We go to CSS and set the default display of the form tag to none. In JS, we hook our list items. Using its ID, we get the login page. And the rest we get via the class name we gave them. When the login page is clicked from the navbar, we set it a click event listener and turn the form tag display from none to flags, which makes it to appear. As for other pages, they are node lists, so we iterate through them and set an event listener on each that turns the form tag display back to none. Oof, we did it! Password display. Let's add this feature to our password inputs. To achieve this, we give their icons unique class name. Then we make these icons hoverable, which gives a good user experience. Then in JS, we call the icons via the unique class name we gave them. Iterating them, we set on each icon a click event listener. First, we simply toggle the icons between I and I/1. Then using the previous element sibling attribute, we get the type of the elements that are previous to the icons, which are the inputs of course, and we check if the type of the input is password, then we make a text, and vice versa. In other words, we are simply toggling the type of the inputs. There we go, nice. Now it's time to divide our form into sign in and sign out forms, and realize the conversion between them. Let's start by changing the text of these elements to match both forms. First, we give the elements unique IDs. From the elements we gave IDs, this one with the toggle forms ID is crucial. It is the one responsible for switching the forms on click. So when it's clicked, we get all other elements by the IDs we gave them. Next, we change their text content depending on the form we are on. For example, log text equals login if the isLogin variable is true. Otherwise, it equals register. We do the same for other elements. I just paste them, you can stop and read them. Finally, we toggle the value of the isLogin variable to switch the form. Okay, it's working. When we are on the login page, we only keep the username and password inputs. Again, we give IDs to other inputs like full name, email, and password confirmation. And by default, we turn off their display because the default form is login. In JS, like others, we get them by their IDs. And we set their display to none if it's the login page, and set it to block if we suddenly click on the create an account text that takes us to the registration page. Since we don't have any data to be remembered and any passwords to forget yet, we don't need this section on the registration page as we need it on the login page. So we give the whole section an ID. Next, we get it in JS, and as the reverse to the inputs we worked on earlier, we set this one's display to flex on the login page and none on the registration. Great, we got what we wanted. I think this toggle text is not looking well. Let's capitalize it. The change of the forms is happening correctly, but rapidly. Let's make this transformation smooth and appealing to the eye. To achieve that, we create some animations, one of which is this reveal animation. It does what its name states. Within a second, it changes the element's opacity from 0 to 1. The second animation we have moves an element up along with an opacity change. Initially, an element is moved down by 100% and it's invisible. And in a second, it moves up and gets revealed. Another one we need is the exact opposite of move up, which we name move down, of course. Okay, we're gonna use these three animations to slow down the transformation. We start with the inputs. Well, we toggle the classes when isLogin is false. That means when we are on the registration form, MoveUp class gets applied to the full name input, and MoveDown class to email and password confirmation inputs. Then we almost do the same for the action section that gets revealed when the active form is logged in. For the texts, we have another case. We have to apply them the reveal animation on every form change. So we apply them the reveal class right before changing their text content and remove it near the end of the function. Testing out, we see smoothness on every element, but not on the texts. That's because we are giving them the reveal class and removing it simultaneously. Therefore, we make sure the class gets removed after a second to see its effect. Nice, but clicking more than once within a second, we see this strange effect. The reason is that the same class application and removal process overlap when we click 2 or more times in a second. To fix it, we check whether this reveal class is removed from the texts or not right at the beginning of the function. If it's not removed, then we do not run the function. There we go, almost perfect. Before proceeding, let's refine the code. We're kinda repeating ourselves. Here we get these text elements and cover them in an array. Then, iterating through them, we apply the reveal class to each, which is the same as above, but with less code. We get rid of the above code. We copy this approach and use it for the removal part as well. As for the inputs, we use the same method. We get them in an array. Then we loop the array. First we copy and paste their display code. and then animation code. Using the position index, we apply the moveUp class to the full name input and the moveDown class to the left inputs. Now we get rid of the above code and check if we haven't crashed anything. It looks nice. Actually, there are two issues we still have to fix. First is our inputs keep their values through the form transformation, which is not a good practice. Second is when we go to other pages while the registration form is the active one and come back to the login page again, we see the registration form, which is not correct, since the default form is login form. We start with the second issue. To make the login form the default form of the login page, we create a conversion function and move all the conversion-related code inside it. Then we trigger this function when the button responsible for toggling the forms is clicked, where we cut the code from, and when the login page link from the navbar is clicked. But before clicking the last one, we always set the isLogin to true, ensuring we always get the login form as the default. We test it and we see that it's working well. Okay, the first issue is that the inputs values live through the forms change. So we write a function that simply cleans the inputs values. First, we get all the inputs. Then we iterate them. Using input ID, we check if it's a checkbox to set its value to false. And for the rest, we set their values to empty string. When we are done, we call this function inside the conversion function right before the conversion happens. Okay, let's check it out. Great job. Time to make the project responsive. If we disable that temporary MIDI query we wrote, we can see how messy is the project for small devices. Let's first import the menu icon for opening and closing the navbar. We paste some CSS code that makes it wide, larger, and fixed on the upper right corner, and by default it's invisible since it's only needed for small screens. Then we add 4 media queries tailored to these specific maximum sizes. Inside the largest media query, we make the form wider from 30 to 40%. We do the same for the next media query, plus we make the navbar padding smaller. From 640 to 950, we make the form tag wider again. Finally, for a screen size of less than 640 pixels, we do a lot. We start by converting the navbar to a drop-down. We give it a border. Blurred background, and most importantly, we move it up by 100%, making it hidden by default. Since we align the navbar vertically, we must do the same for the list items. Next, we make the menu icon appear. Less than 640 pixels is a small size screen, so we make the elements almost the width of the screen. We align the Remember Me checkbox and Forgot Password button vertically like others. Make the white button smaller. And again, align the last text in a column as well. Let's see how responsive we made the project. I suppose we have one issue, which is not clear in my case since I'm working on a large screen. But if you're working on a laptop or small size screens, you know it already. The issue is that the form overlaps the navbar if the viewport height gets smaller. The solution is easy, we just give it a top margin. And we're done. Okay, finally what we want to do is to create this menu icon click that reveals the navbar. Before that, let's create some animations to make this navbar revealing smooth and cool. For the moving down effect, we're gonna use the same move down animation we used for the inputs, but we want it to happen within a half second. Move up effect is the same as move down but the opposite, so we simply replace the transformations. And we need two more animations to rotate the menu icon on click. The first rotates the icon clockwise in a half second. It spins it twice. The second is counterclockwise, meaning it rotates it backward. Okay, good. We come to JS and get the navbar and menu elements. We set the click event listener on the menu icon and check if the navbar is closed. If it's closed, then we apply the move down class, otherwise the move up. But before applying, we need to remove the class, since applying a class the second time while the element already has it does not give us the class effect. We do the exact thing for the menu icon, but with the rotation classes we created for it. Finally, we toggle the menu icon type between the bars and X icons. Let's see what we've built. Did you notice? The menu icon is not rotating. Oops, we capitalized the word wise. Let's fix it fast. There we go. Nice work. Before wrapping out, let's add one more feature. When clicking any links from the navbar, we want the navbar to get closed. To do that, we create a function responsible for closing and opening the menu. We cut the code from the menu click event listener and paste it inside this function. The function accepts whether the menu closes or opens as a parameter. For the menu click, we trigger the function and paste the icon type check as an argument. And when any link from the navbar is clicked, again we call the function and give it a false boolean value as an argument. That means we want the navbar to get closed. It's working fine on small screens, but triggering this function inside the navbar links click event, like this, creates another issue. The issue is that on larger screens, the navbar closes after a click. To fix it, we check for the window width to be less than 640 and only then we trigger the function. Otherwise, we skip the function call. Congrats! We finished the project. It's working well. If you're still here and made it so far, I appreciate it. However, we still have one issue, and I want you to fix it. The issue is that clicking on the password display icon and displaying the password, if we go to the next form, meaning we toggle the form, we see that the password is displayed, which is not the initial state of hiding the password. So go ahead, fix this bug and write in the comments how you did it. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.